House of the Dragon, Season 1, Episode 8, entitled Lord of the Tides, was fantastic. It felt like a great calm before the storm episode, and there were a lot of good, uplifting moments sprinkled throughout, which is a rare thing for something in the A Song of Ice and Fire universe. Particularly, I wanted to talk about one element of it tying into, I think, was the star of the show this episode, that being Viserys. It was his final episode, and Paddy Considine gave one incredible performance. He really knew that it was his episode to hold and to use to show off exactly how great he's done with this role. And particularly, I wanted to discuss the final scene of the episode in which Viserys has a very important conversation with Alicent that did not at all occur in the books, that I wanted to compare and kind of go into the implications of what that is going to mean for the show going forward. So yeah, let's dive into things. Hey, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. I'm sure I'm going to find a ton of other things to talk about involving House of the Dragon, both for the rest of this season and for the foreseeable future before Season 2. We will see exactly what that brings. I already have a few ideas, things I'm working on. And yeah, I'd really appreciate any help to grow the channel. Let's jump into what we're talking about today. So what exactly happens? In the final scene that he has, King Viserys is speaking with Alicent in his bedchambers while he is on the verge of death. However, he does not think that this is Alicent that he's talking to. We can tell by what he says. He talks about Aegon's prophecy, the Song of Ice and Fire that he's been discussing the entire season, that which is inscribed on the dagger that is quite important to this show and to the Game of Thrones show. But he is not fully in control of his faculties. He thinks that Alicent knows about this prophecy and is his daughter who is to inherit the throne, but she's not. She thinks that he is talking about Aegon, their son together, as he continually mentions Aegon and the prince was promised and uniting the realm. He's trying to say that he thinks that Rhaenyra is the prince that is promised, that she is the one who will unite the realm. However, this is not the case. We know this based on the Game of Thrones show, and we know that based on Alicent's apparent interpretation of this, things could go very wrong. In this final moment, she may believe that he is naming their son Aegon to the throne in place of Rhaenyra, which we saw them getting along in this episode, but that is unlikely to last if offered the opportunity to seize the throne. So what exactly has changed from Fire and Blood in this situation? In the book, all we know is that Viserys dies on the third day of the third month in the year 129 AC, or after Conquest. It's not so much an event as it is just kind of a domino falling that is going to lead to many other painful dominoes falling in the book. However, this continues a theme in the show. House of the Dragon, as an adaptation, is a great work of essentially humanizing a source material with very little humanity in it. Fire and Blood is a historical text, pretty much nothing more, and it's great to see the actual humanity of all of these characters and of these events. Paddy Considine's work as Viserys has been one of my favorite aspects of this season so far. He's given a spectacular performance. He's got great range throughout it. He's both very funny at times and very bombastic at other times. Similarly to Bobby B in Season 1 of Game of Thrones. But yeah, overall, I think that Fire and Blood does a great job of adding both humanity to Viserys as a whole and to these wider events at large. This theme of humanization carries over to the pretty much entirety of the green side in this conflict. In the book, there is no mistake here. There is nothing to be said. There is nothing to be misinterpreted. The Greens just do what they're going to do next episode for the sake of doing it and to advance their own ends. Whereas in the show, we have an actual kind of event here. We have Viserys' final words spoken to Alicent, though he thinks she is Rhaenyra. She misinterprets what he says because he does not know who he's speaking to. And this kind of continues Viserys' legacy of attempting to do a good thing and overall falling on his face and creating more conflict. It's worth noting that this last scene between Alicent and Viserys greatly resembles another scene in Alicent's past. She was brought to court with her father when he was made Hand of the King to the previous ruler, Jaehaerys I. Jaehaerys was very old and his health was failing, and Alicent's main role at court was to read to him in his old age. It is actually Alicent who was present for Jaehaerys' last moments. She was the only one there. However, in that moment, Jaehaerys thought that she was his daughter, Sarah. Jaehaerys and Sarah had a very strained relationship, as we've learned from Fire and Blood, as Sarah was banished from court for certain activities she undertook. But it seemed as though Jaehaerys wanted to reconcile with her in her final moments and thought that Alicent was his daughter who had left him long ago. And it's interesting that both of these rulers, addled by either age or sickness, believe Alicent to be their daughter and are imparting some important final words to them, be it a message of forgiveness or of assurance regarding ruling the realm. It's also worth noting that according to certain sources in the books, it is alleged that Alicent and Jaehaerys had a relationship in addition to her just reading to him. However, I don't think that this is the case at all in the show, particularly based on Alicent being aged down and younger, which I've really liked as a narrative decision that's adding to her relationship with Rhaenyra. I just thought that could add an interesting parallel if you do believe that was the case in that context. Viserys' word has been the only thing that propped Rhaenyra up as a ruler at this point to the green side. That is the only merit that Rhaenyra has to the likes of Otto, of Alicent, of Aegon, if he really cares, which he doesn't seem to, or Aemond cares, at least. But overall, this undoing, or perception of undoing, by Alicent seems like it'll be enough to set a lot of very deadly events in motion for the future, and I am quite excited to see them play out. Overall, none of this is to say that I particularly think the Greens are in the right at all. I don't think they are. This entire conflict is pretty much engineered by Otto and Otto alone, as he's the one who suggested Rhaenyra for heir and then immediately recanted it as soon as his own grandsire was going to be a potential candidate for rule. So it's really entirely on him and could entirely be avoided, as Rhaenyra is Viserys' eldest child and deserves the throne. However, I do think the element of adding this ambiguity and this layer of actual misunderstanding to the conflict does create a very interesting element of the war as a whole. And I'm quite excited to see how it plays out. The one character I really hope we see explored more in Season 2, or even in these last 2 episodes of the season, is Otto Hightower. He's the progenitor of this entire conflict, as I said, and Rhys Evon's performance, I think, is my straight-up favorite in the show. Sorry, Patty, I know I was just saying how great your acting was, but he just does such a great job all around. He steals every scene he's in, Evans does. But yeah, overall, I think that Otto has been built up as an interesting character, and there are hints that there is something deeper there to his motivation, that he might be a pawn of his brothers or of some larger scheme. But there is definite conflict in him that you can sense at different times. He's definitely a bad person, probably one of the worst on this show so far, as pretty much all of the deaths that are upcoming are pretty much on him for starting this conflict, as I mentioned earlier. But he is still a fascinating character and extremely well acted, which is why I really like him. Similar to Tywin Lannister in the early seasons of Game of Thrones. And since I am talking about performances that I absolutely love, and because I feel like I am now contractually obligated to talk about Aemond, since my most viewed thing by a country mile is about Aemond, I really enjoyed the new actor's performance as Aemond this episode. I think he really stole the show and acted as a kind of perfect villain in a way. I just absolutely loved the performance in every way, and I'm quite excited to see what he does going into the future. We're now officially heading into the final 2 episodes of House of the Dragon Season 1, and if Game of Thrones is to be believed, the final 2 episodes are usually where the real action goes down in these seasons. I, for one, am ecstatic to see it. I can't wait to see exactly what they're going to do with things. I have some idea as a book reader, as I'm sure many of you do, but I am pleasantly surprised by where they're taking this season. My thought initially when I first heard, House of the Dragon, they're starting off in this time period, I assumed that Season 1 would end with Viserys' death. So the fact that they're going beyond this is quite fun to see. And I know a lot of people on Twitter were expecting him to die at any moment, but I'm glad that he didn't, as him kind of sticking around and gradually falling apart really added to the kind of feel of this era, just being an era of decay. In the end, Viserys Targaryen died as he lived, creating conflicts that would destroy his family for generations to come. And I, for one, greatly appreciate that. I also think it's worth taking a minute to discuss the state of things in King's Landing now that Viserys is dead, because it is a huge advantage for Team Green. The Greens now have control of the capital, essentially, and they are the only ones who know that the king is dead. Rhaenyra is his heir, but if she doesn't know that he's dead, she's not going to be able to press her claim. She doesn't have any reason to if she believes Viserys to be alive. The only member of the Blacks who is currently in King's Landing is Rhaenys, as we saw in this last episode. So there could be an angle of her passing this information along. However, we'll have to see how the Greens take action in order to potentially curb this or curb the news getting out at all, if that is the course that they decide to take. All of this is to say that the Greens have just been presented the golden opportunity to seize the throne. They have the means, they have the people in King's Landing and the knowledge that this is happening. They have the motive being to gain more power for the High Towers and to put Aegon on the throne. And they have the opportunity with the death of King Viserys and Rhaenyra's absence from King's Landing. So yeah, next episode could bring a lot of action, and I'm quite excited to see it, at least in terms of political moves, as the death of a king always creates a fairly sizable power vacuum, and we saw that at the end of season 1 of Game of Thrones, and we saw how well that went in terms of making great television, though not very well for Ned Stark. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to see how that plays out and how the Greens seize this opportunity, as I know they will. So yeah, that's been the discussion of Viserys' final scene in House of the Dragon, what that could mean, and why that's a big change from the book. What did you think? What do you think of Viserys' final scene and episode as a whole? What did you think of all of the little character moments throughout? I really liked a lot of it. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to the next one, as we're going to really get into whatever the main bulk of this conflict is going to be. And I, for one, cannot wait. The promo looks absolutely insane. And I'm going to make a few more videos about this week. So yeah, be sure to stay tuned for those. Be sure to like, subscribe, comment, all that. And thank you all for watching.